So Razieme, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did this year?
Sure thing. Hi guys, my name is Razieme Iborra, and this is my IB Visual Arts HL concentration. My concentration is defining escapism from reality through pre-production filmmaking processes. And basically, I've always been really passionate about filmmaking. I'm going to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts this fall to major in film and television. And I'd always wanted to take the IB film course. I know that there is one in existence, but Jackson High School doesn't offer it. And so obviously I've also been very passionate about studio art, so I decided to make this concentration as film-based as I possibly could. And my concentration basically was rooted last year in my IB history class. We learned about the Great Depression and what an impact filmmaking had in the Great Depression. My teacher, Mr. Ture, talked a lot about escapism and how people during the Depression found their escape from realities, from their own individual realities, through filmmaking. And they could watch a movie and not have to think about their hardships for a couple hours. And that really intrigued me because I've always been the type to delve into my own fantasies inside my head and escape from my own reality. So I really connected with that, and I took that. And through it, I developed this concentration. And my concentration is split up into 3 series, Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, and they increase in complexity as they go on. And so each series represents an idea for a film, and so all of the art that you see could be potential pre-production concept art that's made in actual filmmaking processes. So this is my first series, which I've dubbed Brave. It's about a boy named Kenny, whose nickname is Brave, and he draws on his skin in permanent ink, whatever that may be, pen, marker, and whatever he draws on his skin sinks into his head, and then he can see those images that he had previously drawn on his skin. So my first piece, I started out very traditional, as if you were going into a sales pitch and pitching a film to a production company. And so I have concept art, I have fashion designs for the kind of clothes that Kenny would be wearing, the kind of textures that would be incorporated into the film, the kinds of colors that would be incorporated. And then I followed that up with this watercolor representation of the final character drawing of Kenny. Following that, I went into a digital 3D set design where I designed the worlds that Kenny sees through his own eyes, depending on what he draws on his skin. And then branching off from that, I started to get more conceptual with it and a little bit more imaginative. I thought, if I were Kenny, what kind of world would I create for myself? And I love cities. Obviously, I'm going to New York to study for college. I love cities. And so I would design a world where I could be completely free in a very urban environment. And so I created this watercolor piece entitled Drains that portrays my feet after kicking off the boots that I was wearing. So I could be completely connected and one-on-one with the concrete under my feet and connected with that city environment that really inspires me. My next series is the Carmen series. My interest in filmmaking really bases itself in drama films. Those are the kind of films I would love to create myself. And a type of personality that really intrigues me and things that I've struggled with in my own life is basically the inability to cope very well with emotion or feel emotion very much at all. So I designed this series around my own life experiences and what I find interesting. And I started out basically very realistic, or slightly realistic, not photorealistic, but realistic enough. And then I started to delve more into conceptualizing the withdrawal from society and the withdrawal from emotion. So you see the blackening of the eyes in these 2 pieces, in Put Away and Withdrawing. So it kind of goes in order of starting out somewhat realistic, and then the character Carmen going farther and farther within herself and drawing away from other people. And then from the conceptualizing, very isolated image here, I wanted to go back into something that's more realistic because I wanted to prepare myself to do an acrylic painting. And so I created this piece in acrylic, charcoal, and some gesso and some soft pastels thrown in there called shifts. And the idea behind this piece is going back from the conceptualized, very emotional work to something a little bit more simple and representative of a character sketch. My idea for this piece was a concept artist who had one piece of paper but a lot of ideas. So he just kept drawing figures over figures over figures. And then the last piece in my Carmen series is just entitled Carmen, and it's full color in acrylic paint, and it brings back kind of to the more realistic style that you see in the first piece to kind of conclude the series. So it's realistic, but it's still very withdrawn at the same time, tying everything together. This piece also at the 2014 Scholastics Art and Writing Awards won the American Vision Award after winning a gold key. My piece Put Away also won a gold key with drawing, and She Is Me won honorable mentions, and Drains won a silver key. So very, very proud of that. Moving on, this is definitely the most developed concept that I had out of any of the series. It is the most complex and the most extensive with 6 total pieces. And what inspired me to do something like this is basically with drama films that I'm most of the time very interested in. With drama films, when it comes to pre-production and concept art, you don't get a large variation in the kind of concept art that artists will create for those films. It's basically some character development, some experimentation with color, and that's about it. But you don't do things like sculpture, you don't do prosthetics, you don't do anything like that. Mini models, you don't do anything like that with drama films. And I was very inspired by Lord of the Rings, which is a very, very successful, a technically and artistically successful endeavor. It was nominated for a total of 17 or so Oscars between the 3 films. And I was really, really interested in how the filmmakers created Lord of the Rings and all of the kind of processes that they went through to finally create the ideal version of Middle-earth. So I combined an idea of some science fiction fantasy with the drama element that I loved so much, and I created this idea of a dystopian society that bases everything and its social classes on a really shallow judgment of how beautiful a person is. And there are basically 3 classes. There are the upper class citizens who are beautiful. They show off their bodies. They wear sheer bodysuits to protect and also show off their bodies. There's a middle class called the Risks, and they do all the work like construction and things like that that need to be done to maintain an active society. And then there's the lowest class called the Wrecked. And the Wrecked are disfigured. Whenever they have injuries, they get implanted with surgical plates all over their bodies, and they're really very Frankensteinian, if you will. And this inspiration came from, I fell off my horse last year in the fall of my junior year, and I had to get a plate on my collarbone. It was broken into 3 separate pieces, and I'm very thin. Don't know if you can tell under the leather jacket, but I'm very thin. And the plate was very protruding on my collarbone, so that really inspired me. And I really embraced it. It was like a battle scar to me, so I was really keen to base some artwork off of it. So the first thing I did was a sculptural piece, and I attempted to do a prosthetic after this sculpture, using this as the positive mold, but that failed miserably. And the sculpture kind of fell off in the mold and that kind of thing. But I do have evidence that I did create this sculpture of my main character, Rain, in this series, and she is her story is that she is originally of high class, but then she suffered a severe accident and had to have all of these plates implanted into her face. And thus she got knocked down to a very low class status. And so this was the sculpture depicting the logistics of those plates rearranged on her face. And then I wanted to take that and make it into a 2D representation of how her skin would look around the areas with plates, etc. So I made this photo manipulation, obviously, of my face, and all of these plates were pictures that I took of my collarbone at the time, and it still had the plate in it at the time, and then I manipulated all of them to fit my facial structures, and then blended the colors around to show an accurate depiction of basically how all of those plates would look. I conceptualized further. This piece had to do with the makeup that Rain would be wearing in the film. It's a very ashy look, very dirty, because she's working a lot in an industrial pit, basically, is where the wrecks work in their society, which is what this concept art details. I did a conceptual, moving back to the drama element, I did a conceptual piece depicting the pain and the emotions that Rain feels in this society, with some color representation of different costumes that she would wear at different times. And then I finally finished everything up, and I was very excited to do this costume piece. This represents a costume that Rain rebels against society, and she creates it out of scraps, metal scraps and fabric scraps that she finds around the industrial pit. And then she basically parades her body, showing off her body, showing off that she is still beautiful, and challenging those stipulations of society. This was created out of a hodgepodge of different things. Basically, all of these were cardboard scraps that I cut apart, taped them in duct tape, painted them, smeared hot glue on them for texture, and then gave the whole thing a paint job. I have newspaper here in the sleeves, I have Coke cans here in the collar, and some burlap and zippers here in the skirt. That is basically the whole rundown of my concentration. Oh, and this piece, actually, this is an oil piece. The actual canvas cannot be here today because it's actually in a show right now where it won first place and granted me a $1,000 scholarship in the Canton Museum Art Show. So very happy about that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.